Now we're ready to check our pattern and make sure our pattern looks good, make sure we're getting a nice build of material through the gun. So we'll start out by leaving the atomizing air off, which is the left regulator. We're going to bring the pump pressure up to maybe 25, 30 pounds to start. Okay, then we're going to come over to our test area in the spray booth, and we're going to spray a couple of test patterns just to see what it looks like with no atomizing air. So here we're just going to pull the trigger back, and we're going to look at the pattern. Really, the pattern looks really good. We got a nice full wet center, and then the two tails on each side. The tails you're always going to see when you're spraying with Air Assist Airless because we use the atomizing air to draw the tails out. So we'll just do a quick pass to see how that looks as we go along. And it looks really nice. It's a full pattern. So now we can flip our test board around, and we're going to bring in the atomizing air. The atomizing air side is the left regulator. We're going to open up the air valve, and we're going to set the pressure to start with probably 10 or 12 pounds. Now remember, when you set it, the main air coming in is going to give you a lot higher reading than when your trigger is actually pulled. So when you check this, you want to make sure that your pressure you set is with trigger pulled on this regulator. Okay, now that we've brought the atomizing air in, now we're going to do another little test spray to see how our pattern looks. And if you're seeing a little bit of distortion in the pattern such as that, you can bring the atomizing air up a little bit more. And you can start seeing the tails disappear. Bring the fluid pressure up just a little bit more so you get a little bit more defined, nice pattern through there, like we're seeing here. That's looking really good. So we're going to adjust the atomizing air up to about 14 pounds. And we'll do another test spray. Once we have the test spray set, then you're ready to spray your board. That looks really good right there. You can see it's a nice even pattern. Spray's nice. And notice how very little overspray. The control on the gun basically is a side port control, which is on the back at the top. By turning this all the way in, that widens the pattern. And when you have the pattern width open is when you're doing a full-size door area. And so you can kind of see here the difference in the width of the pattern. That's the full size. Now we'll take and screw the side port out and do the shorter pattern. And you can actually see the difference in the two widths of the pattern. You can see how wide this pattern is as compared to this pattern. So now you can do your smaller areas, or you can open it all the way up to do your larger areas. Now that we're ready to spray the lacquer on the board, we've got the gun all set up. Ordinarily at this point you would don your respirator to protect you from any of the toxic fumes and you would have your overalls on. But since we're just going to spray this one board and show you a little technique, I'm not going to be here long enough to have to worry about wearing the respirator at this point. And with our spray booth on, our good air flow through. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start by spraying the edges of the board. So we'll come across and we'll just spray the edge of the board. You always want to spray towards the filters on the spray booth. And you want to keep your hands smooth, nice smooth action across the board. You don't want to arc or swing. Okay, once we've got the edges, now we're ready to crisscross across the top. A good rule of thumb is to hold the gun about your hand distance up from the surface. And you're going to start to spray towards the filters again. Holding the gun straight across, holding your arms straight. We're just going to come back to a 50% overlap across the top of the board, just like that. You don't want to arc or swing. When you arc or swing, you're going to have less material on the outside, more material in the middle, and less on the outside. Your mill thickness is going to be quite a bit different. Okay, during the day as you're spraying, like we've done on this board here, you'll want to occasionally take solvent and take your brush that came with the system and brush off the air cap and the tip a little bit just to keep any buildup from forming onto the tip and the air cap. And once you're done spraying, at the end of the day, if you're spraying a pre-CAT lacquer, you can leave the pre-CAT lacquer in the system overnight for spraying the next day. If you're spraying a post-CAT lacquer, you're going to want to drain the system and flush it through because the post-CAT lacquers have a pot life. It could be anywhere from 6 to 12 hours. You want to check your owner's sheet on the material to make sure of the pot life. First thing we're going to do is we're going to relieve the pressure off the system to start flushing. So we're going to shut off the atomizing air on the left-hand regulator. We're going to take the safety off, pull the trigger, and bleed the air off the system. Now we're going to take and shut off the right-hand regulator, which is the pump pressure. We're going to bleed the pressure off the system here. Once we've bled the pressure off the system, now we can lock the safety out again, and we can remove the tip in the air cap and the ring. You always want to take and drop your air cap and fluid tip into a compatible solvent and let it soak overnight so that nothing can dry or harden into the tip, causing a tip plug the next morning. Now what we're going to do is flush through. So we're going to remove the siphon assembly from the lacquer and put it into our solvent flush. And as we do this process, we can save a lot of the lacquer when we pump it through and then back into the lacquer container until you start seeing the flow of lacquer thinner. So we're going to reduce the pressure here on the pump. We're going to open up the valve, and we're going to start flushing the system through. And as you can see here, we're getting the lacquer through. And since we are using a 1/8 inch hose, it takes a lot less material to flush this through. You can hear the pump start to speed up. It starts pulling the solvent up, and then you can start seeing the flow of solvent into the container. Now we can go back over to our flush solvent. And we're just going to flush this through until it comes out clear and clean. Now once you've got this flushed through and your materials come out clear and clean, we'll go ahead and set the safety back on. We'll turn the main valve to the pump off, unscrew your ball valve out, or your regulator out, and we're just going to finish and relieve the pressure and leave the solvent in the line overnight. That way nothing can dry and harden within the lines themselves. If you're doing waterborne coatings, you're going to do the same process, but you're going to use a water flush or warm water flush to flush the waterborne coatings out rather than using solvent materials.